Morning folks, and welcome back to another YouTube vlog. So this is officially my first week on my 8-week fat loss phase. So last week I brought you through a vlog just kind of in preparation for the 8-week fat loss phase. Had a lot going on last week with celebrations, rugby and everything else. So this is the get-go week. So I'm just back from a run there. It is Wednesday morning currently, and I went for a 10k run. So I suppose everything is going to plan so far. Staying within my calories, I'm in about a 300 calorie deficit, eating 1815 calories and trying to keep the protein up around between 180 grams per day to just over 200 grams per day. Some days will differ depending on training and stuff like that. But yeah, backtracking calories, really accurately, trying to stay on track with those little things. I suppose the biggest problem for me was I was just letting maybe evening snacking creep in a little bit too much, and I didn't really need it for the amount of training I was doing at that time, and that's where I kind of gained a few pounds as well. So the 10k run went pretty well this morning. Didn't want to go too fast or kind of, test myself out too much. I actually have another rugby game tomorrow, and I was absolutely killed after the rugby game I had on Saturday. So it took a while to recover from that, but I'm taking the creatine daily now as well, 5 grams, 1 scoop. And it's definitely helping with the recovery, being able to kind of bounce back and go again and train in the following day and stuff like that. So, so kind of the plan is to maybe train 3 to 4 times in the gym per week. That was my first run this week, and I probably will get maybe a Saturday run in as well. Tomorrow I'll be probably covering a lot of ground in the rugby game as well. So we'll see what the recovery is like for the end of the week. But really actually enjoying the process so far with kind of getting back tracking calories, and I think that's really important as well, that it can't be, a daunting process. At the start, for someone that's new getting into it, it is obviously going to be daunting. Tracking calories and kind of not being sure what to eat and stuff like that is tricky. But, for someone like myself who has a little bit more experience, and realise that it doesn't have to be over restrictive, it's easy for me to jump back in and kind of get nailed down on things like tracking calories and just kind of zoning in on the foods that I'm having, the amounts of foods, more importantly. And once you kind of get into it, it becomes a routine, and to kind of set yourself up and realising what the important things are then as well. So I'm going to go and grab some breakfast now, and I'll be taking you through like a couple of questions that come in from my DMs as well on Instagram, just around things on my own fat loss phase. A couple of really good questions actually, so I'll run through them later on today. Bit of coaching to do as well, so hopefully you find a couple of the tips helpful in this vlog. Please let me know in the comments, please give me a review, and would love to hear some feedback. So as you can see, I'm pretty much making the same breakfast as I did in my last vlog. And if you're following me on Instagram, you'll see that I'm making this like post-workout meal / breakfast. And although having some variation in your food is good, especially if the goal is fat loss, it's good to have some staple meals. So it makes life easier when you're going doing your shopping. You can pick maybe 3 carb sources, 3 protein sources, and then veggies are veggies. It makes life easier when you're going picking up those ingredients, exactly what you need to get. And then for prepping those meals as well, it makes life a little bit easier too. So, variety is good, but not to have too much variety when the goal is fat loss, because it can get a bit confusing, it can get a bit complicated as well. And then less complication when you're trying to lose fat with your nutrition especially, the better it's going to be. So this is my protein smoothie. If you're on Instagram, go and follow Megan Banhan Fitness. I have a recipe up there for this. And the recipe is also in my last vlog on YouTube. But it's a perfect, easily digestible meal post-workout, and especially if I'm trying to cut calories a small bit as well, it's going to keep me full. And I find it's been really keeping me full, which is great, because I normally would have had a lot bigger of a breakfast. I would have had more carb sources, would have had maybe some egg base with a bagel or something like that. So I'm keeping this for breakfast time, post-workout if I do an early session, and then for lunch I'm having more carb-based stuff, and for dinner as well. So it definitely helps me save on calories, but it also keeps me full, and that's the main thing that we want, especially early on in the day, to try and front load those calories, have something high in protein, and especially then after your workout as well, you want to have that protein hit to help you recover and replenish those muscle stores. So this is going to keep me going for a while. I'll probably have lunch maybe around 1 to 2 o'clock. Have some coaching to do now, some one-to-one sessions in the gym. So I'll get this into me, head in there, and then I'll be doing a lot of admin work then for the rest of the day, and I'll get back to a few of those questions as well. So just after finishing some coaching there, guys, had 2 PT sessions, and it's currently just after 12 o'clock and the weather is absolutely unreal. It's like 20 degrees showing up in the dash here. Long may it last. It makes everything just so much easier, and everyone seems in a good mood and you're just motivated to do more stuff, which is brilliant. So hopefully it hangs around for a bit longer. So the plan now is I'm going to do some upper body workout in horsepower. Just go through a few bits, nothing too strenuous. You know, some days I'll do that where I do a run and I go to the gym, just to kind of, I suppose, get 2 things done in the one day, because some days I might have less time to get a run in and stuff like that as well. So main aim will be just to hit a couple of main upper body exercises. Yesterday when I was in the gym, I done some cardio. I was on the treadmill and I was on the ski erg, so I kind of done an interval session with those 2, and I also done a little bit of shoulder work. So today I'm probably going to do a little bit more maybe arm isolation work and a small bit of back work as well, just to hit those muscle groups and use a couple of the machines and horsepower. So the last, I suppose, 2 to 2.5 years, I've started using more machine exercises in my training, and I've really felt that they've helped me, I suppose, tone up and get stronger in kind of the main isolation exercises. You know, they really have a good place for anyone really in a workout program, especially people who are newcomers into gym exercises. Machine exercises are really, really useful to give you correction on your form, and I suppose to not have much room for error and risk of injury then as well. They're very controlled. You know, certain exercises you're either sitting down in a machine or you're standing up, and you're moving with the way that the machine moves, so it's really good to have in the mix. So yeah, really good stuff this morning. Looking forward to having some lunch now in a while, so I'm kind of dragging out my lunch a little bit longer today. Starting to feel a little bit hungry now, but I have a can of Monster here, so nice caffeine hit that I'm going to have before my workout, and this should kind of keep me going then to lunch. And yeah, have a lot of admin work to get done as well, so I am going to hit the gym now. So that's just a few clips from my session there today, guys. So I went for back and biceps predominantly. Really good session actually, and just kind of hit a couple of simple compound movements. You know, I wasn't spending ages in the gym either. You wouldn't want it today. It's absolutely roasting in there. It feels like you're working twice as hard just because of the heat. And really happy actually with the assisted pull-ups. I've taken about 10 kilo off the assist on the stack on that, so really happy with progress in that. Pull-ups is always something I would have struggled with before, and that assist machine is really helpful to try and just engage the lats a little bit more. But one thing I wanted to mention about training in general, and someone who might be doing some resistance style training, whether it be with weights or with body weight, is to really focus on your range of motion and your form and your exercises, especially if you feel as though, you know, you're not making as much progress as you would like in certain exercises, or you're not getting stronger. Something I've really focused on, I suppose, the last 2 to 3 years is my range of motion and my actual exercise form in each exercise I do. So making sure, like in your squat, that you're hitting a sufficient range of motion in your depth. The same with any kind of like pushing exercise, upper body one, you know, are you getting a good range of motion in your overhead press, in the likes of your chest press as well? Because, you know, you want to kind of recruit as much muscle fibers as you can in each exercise to stimulate enough muscle growth there as well. So it's not all about, you know, increasing the weight or increasing the amount of sets or reps you do. Making sure that your range of motion and your form is on point is going to be a good factor kind of in terms of, you know, your development and strength as well. Because if you keep focusing on increasing your weight that you're using or the sets and reps, but you're not doing the exercise correctly, or you're not hitting a sufficient range of motion, then you're going to have that kind of counteractive effect there as well on the progress. So that's something I would really get my own clients to focus on, whether it be in-person coaching or whether it be through my online coaching service. So, you know, where they be following the program on the coaching app. And what I do there is, if they feel as though they're not making enough progress in a certain exercise, I'll get them to send me over a video of them doing that exercise, and then I can kind of, you know, tweak where they might be going wrong in their form, you know, where they could work harder in terms of getting more range of motion and stuff like that. And yes, there are loads of ways you can improve your mobility. Lack of range of motion is kind of down to, you know, lack of experience in a certain exercise, or it could be down to lack of mobility. Say for example, the likes of the squat, you could be lacking mobility in your ankles or your hips, and that can affect your overall performance in that exercise. So there are ways and means you can kind of target your ankles and your hips, but the more you squat and the more you kind of focus on getting down deeper, the better you will become, you know. So kind of focusing on those little things in your exercises will really help as well build strength, and just kind of have a better all-round recruitment of muscles then as well. So time for lunch now. It is coming up to 2 o'clock. I'm definitely feeling hungry. The can of Monster definitely tied me over well. I was just kind of getting hungry there before the gym. So, you know, normally at that time I probably would have grabbed a snack or something like that. But, you know, that whole approach of kind of making yourself adapt to the energy you have. Like, you know, once I got into the session, I was absolutely fine. Just I was feeling a little bit peckish beforehand, but you know, that can of Monster, a little bit of hit of caffeine and energy beforehand really helped. So, you know, using those types of things to your advantage when you're in a fat loss phase is really important as well, to kind of, you know, be able to space out your meals a little bit better and not require as much snacks then throughout the day as well, to kind of save on calories, and then in turn you're going to drop off that body fat as well. So going to grab again a similar lunch to my last vlog. So it will be eggs, I'll have some chicken and a bagel, so a little bit more carb in there than what I had this morning. So, you know, that should kind of give me more energy and replenish those glycogen stores as well after training. And yeah, I'm going to get it into me, and I will be back then answering questions later on. So I'm back in the admin cave now for the evening, as I like to call it, guys. Going through actually some edits on the vlog so far. I don't know how some people do this all the time. It's actually tricky enough to do the edits and stuff. But so if anyone has any tips or anything, please let me know. But learning as I go anyway, which is good. So just wanted to touch a little bit on my own body weight at the minute, and chat a little bit about the scales then as well, the weigh-in scales. So I suppose this time 3 years ago, I would have been probably at my least fittest and have a lot less muscle muscle mass on my body as well. I was weighing in over 80 kilo. And this time last year, I got down to my lightest between 69 to 70 kilo after taking part in a 12-week fat loss phase. So at that time, I was in preparation for a half marathon as well. I was a lot leaner. I had gained a lot more muscle mass as well. And I was in pretty good position in terms of my own fitness and my own physique as well. So then I weighed in this morning. So last week I weighed in at 76 kilo and this morning I weighed in at 75.9 kilo. I'm kind of expecting myself to get down around 70, 71 kg after this 8-week phase. I'm not kind of too zoned in on the actual weighing scales itself because I know that even from this time last year to now, I definitely have gained a bit more muscle mass as well, which will be affecting my overall weight on the scales too. And in terms of this week specifically, I am 2 days out from starting my time in the month. So, you know, I'm expecting to see a lot of fluctuations. Normally, before my week of menstruation is where I kind of experience a lot of my symptoms in terms of like bloating, in terms of cravings, in terms of hunger and low energy and stuff like that. So this week actually hasn't been too bad, but I've been putting more of a focus on increasing my water intake, increasing my fiber intake to help with digestion, and again I've been kind of increasing my step count more consciously too. So all those little things are going to help as well. But it's really important to be aware of all these things that will affect the weighing scales, and that's really something that I coach my clients as well, because a lot of clients would still have that kind of emotional attachment to the scales and be very hooked up on what it's telling them, and be using it as their only metric for validation of progress throughout their fat loss journey or their program that they're doing. So, you know, for me, when I'm coaching clients, the weighing scales will be all part of that, but I always like people to weigh in on a daily basis to then take an average from week to week and then look at that progress over the course of a month or whatever it may be and see where the trend is going in their weight. And it also gives people a better understanding of the reasons why fluctuations are happening, and how often it actually happens, and different things that will cause that too. So I actually have a full podcast on different things around the weighing scales, how you should approach using the scales and using it to your advantage. It's really important to use it to your advantage and kind of not get solely caught up on what it's telling you, and not to kind of solely base that around the only progress that you're making or not making, you know, and things like having other forms of measurements to go by in terms of like progress pictures are really, really good. And in terms of your actual body measurements, then by taking a tape measure and then seeing how clothes are fitting as well is a really good one too. You know, that's something I'll always kind of ask my clients. Say, for example, if the weighing scales has gone up 1 kg compared to last week, I'm going to ask them, how are clothes fitting? How are you actually feeling in terms of your gym workouts? How is your energy levels? How's your sleep? Because those are all other things that we kind of take for granted, and it's really important to pay attention to those little things as well and not to put all your focus on the weighing scales too. And you know, it can differ. Say for example, if someone has a substantial amount of weight to lose, say for example maybe 10 kilo, and they're kind of, you know, they're going to see big drops in the scales from week to week, you know, and over time. Whereas maybe someone like myself, I don't have a massive amount of weight to lose in terms of on the scales. So I'm more than likely going to see a lot more difference in how my clothes are fitting, in how my performance is in my workouts, in my runs, and how I'm feeling overall in terms of my general energy, my sleep and stuff like that as well. So that's really important to kind of pay attention to. So as I mentioned earlier on, I'm going to go through a few questions that came in through my Instagram question box that I put up yesterday on my stories, kind of questions around my 8-week fat loss phase and things that people are unsure of for their own journey as well. So the first one, I actually done a video on Instagram yesterday. So again, definitely check that out, Megan Banahan Fitness. But just to run through it quickly here, how do I work out my calorie deficit? So the best way to do this is literally go on Google and search calorie calculator, put in all your details. And if you're unsure of your activity levels, undershoot it. So undershoot your activity levels, and this is going to kind of give you a better reading for your calorie deficit. Then the best thing that you can do, because there's so many calorie calculators online, just pick one and stick with it, because I guarantee if you enter your details into one, it could be different outcome if you enter details into another one. So, you know, don't get too bogged down in that. Don't get too, I suppose, confused with it either. Just pick one, stick to it, and work with it for about 7 to 10 days, and, you know, see how you're getting on in terms of your tracking calories and stuff like that. So it's very important, like once you have your calorie deficit number calculated, start tracking your calories accurately. So this means everything that you have the weekends, you know, anything that you feel as though you don't need to be tracking needs to be tracked, because they contain calories too. So the likes of sauces, the likes of sweets and treats, or anything that, you know, you might be just picking up and having, we'll say maybe before dinner or after dinner or whatever it is, they all contain calories. So it's important to kind of track accurately, weigh out certain foods that you're unsure of. Don't be kind of guessing things, because the reason why people don't see results after a couple of weeks is generally because they're not in a calorie deficit. They think they are, but they're probably not tracking accurately, and therefore they're not seeing the results they would like. So it's really important to get focusing on tracking your calories accurately and entering your details to a calorie calculator online. The best kind of way to start in a calorie deficit is to be in a deficit between 300 to 500 calories below your maintenance. If you go into more of an extreme deficit, any more than that, it's going to be quite unsustainable for you to stick to in the early on part of the process. So, you know, trying to go on the lesser end of that scale, around 300 calories, that's what I'm doing at the minute. I'm finding it not too tricky at the minute. Like, I'm getting little bouts of hunger, and that's just my body adapting to, I suppose, the lower amount of food that I'm feeding myself. If you go into more of an extreme deficit, any more than that, it's going to be quite unsustainable for you to stick to in the early on part of the process. So, you know, trying to go on the lesser end of that scale, around 300 calories, that's what I'm doing at the minute. I'm finding it, you know, not too tricky at the minute. Like, I'm getting little bouts of hunger, and that's just my body adapting to, I suppose, the lower amount of food that I'm feeding myself. You know, I'm running off of less fuel than I was, say, 2 to 3 weeks ago. So it's important to kind of allow that to happen. You know, it's really important to allow that to happen, and I suppose to be able to push through that as well. So that's the best way, I suppose, on how to work out your calorie deficit. The next question then is, how many cheat days should I allow for in a calorie deficit? So really good question. And the way I like to look at cheat days is, we shouldn't kind of have cheat days as such. If you're doing your calorie deficit and if you're doing your fat loss phase right, you should be able to allow yourselves things that you enjoy and food that you enjoy more often than just all in one day. Because more often than not, say if someone allocates themselves a cheat meal on a Saturday or at the weekend, Sunday, whatever it is, that can then normally turn into a cheat day, because, you know, you feel as though you've done good all week, Monday to Friday, you've really restricted things, you haven't had any kind of things out of the ordinary in terms of like the sweets and treats that you enjoy, and then come on that day, you feel as though, well, yeah, actually I can have more here today because I haven't had it all week. But that's where, you know, it can spiral out of control, and then that can affect your mindset into trying to get back on track on Monday. You know, you step on the scales on Monday, you see that it's up, and you blame it on having that cheat day or cheat meal, and then that kind of vicious cycle just keeps happening. So the best way to approach your fat loss journey in terms of your nutrition is to find a balanced approach. So the 80-20 approach is always good, where you have 80% nutrient dense food and then 20% of it is things that you enjoy on a daily basis. You know, and be in control of that, you know. So try and allocate, you know, certain snacks that you're going to have in the day. Be in control of the consumption that you have, not to kind of completely restrict yourself from things that you enjoy, because that's where that binge restrict cycle keeps happening for people. So, you know, I would, rather than kind of focusing on cheat meals or cheat days, try and learn how to incorporate things that you enjoy into your overall week, so that it doesn't feel like such a big deal when it comes to a Saturday or Sunday when you're having this cheat day, you know, because you're more likely to go out of control with that binge then as well. So that would be the main advice around that. The next question then is, I do spinning 2 to 3 times a week. Is this enough, or should I be doing more gym work for fat loss? It's a really good question. So I suppose when someone starts into a fat loss journey and they haven't got the knowledge there as to how they should approach their training, how they should approach their workouts, their whole mindset is that they need to be doing really hard workouts. They need to be doing a lot of cardio, high intensity exercise to basically sweat and burn off the calories they're eating. And, you know, more often than not, people can't sustain this longer than 4 weeks. They end up failing because it was too hard to stick to. And, you know, their thought process is then, oh, I failed because I've no willpower or I've no discipline. So that's really important to realize that it's not because you've no willpower, it's not because you've no discipline. It's simply down to your approach is too unsustainable for you. So, you know, sometimes with spinning, don't get me wrong, it's a very good way of, you know, burning calories and I suppose working out and exercising. But I always kind of advise for people to throw in resistance training into the mix as well, because it's going to benefit you in terms of getting stronger, in terms of developing your muscle mass, which in turn is going to help your metabolism, because when you've more muscle on your body, you're going to be burning more calories at rest, you know, which is going to be beneficial for the whole fat loss process. So spinning is great to be doing 2 to 3 times a week, but definitely having something else in the mix in terms of some sort of resistance style training is going to be important for creating muscle growth, and it's going to give the muscles a different stimulus as well. So like when we look at the likes of running, when we look at the likes of spinning or walking, they're kind of exercises that don't require you to put your body through a large range of motion, you know. It's more so about high intensity cardiac output, whereas when you go into the gym and you're doing resistance style training, it's more so focused on you're putting your muscles through a range of motion, you're targeting muscle growth, you know, and that's where we want to kind of tone up our body. And the benefit of that then as well is that it's going to speed up the process of fat loss, you know, and kind of having a program that you're following to benefit your mobility. Resistance training is going to benefit your mobility because you're going to be, again, doing lots of exercises that require you to go into a range of motion that you wouldn't normally be. So, and it all comes down to then as well what you enjoy doing, because if you're someone that is going in doing spinning 2 to 3 times a week with the thought process being, this is the only thing that I need to do to lose fat, you're probably not going to enjoy it, and therefore you probably won't stick at it for too long. So it's definitely important to enjoy what you're doing, and again, it's going to come down to being in a calorie deficit. If you're doing spinning 2 to 3 times a week, that's great, but if you're not in a calorie deficit, you're not going to lose the fat or lose the weight that you're looking for, okay? So it is really important to focus on that, but yeah, I always kind of recommend my clients to, I suppose, focus on some form of resistance training to build muscle and to help that process of fat loss. And, you know, optimally we want to have a little bit of cardio, a little bit of resistance training, and muscle focus training. That's going to be a good way to approach it. But yeah, it is important to kind of enjoy what you're doing then as well. The next question then is, how many workouts should I be doing per week? So again, this is going to come down to the person individually, what they are able to consistently commit to each week. So, you know, say for example, if you're someone who can only get 2 workouts in a week, roll with that, be consistent with it each week. You know, don't kind of set yourself the target of having to get 4 workouts, 5 workouts in a week if you're not going to be able to do that consistently, because that again is going to play into your mindset in a negative way. You're going to think, oh well, I got no workouts in this week, what's the point? So trying to focus on what you can do consistently over a long period of time, you're going to benefit a lot from that. You know, and as well, workouts, remember, are always going to be a bonus. As I spoke about in the last question, calorie deficit is the key for fat loss. So the workouts are going to be a bonus for that. Something that I always speak about to my own clients is focusing on the 4 pillars, one being nutrition, second one being sleep, water intake, and your step count or your NEAT activity levels. So, you know, trying to focus on those 4 things first before you go doing any workouts is key, because the workouts will always be a bonus. So, you know, whatever you're able to commit to consistently week on week with your workouts, that's what you should do. The next question is just around the app I'm using to track my calories. So what app are you tracking your calories on, seeing it on your Instagram story? So I'm actually using the Kahuna's online coaching app that I use for my own clients for their profiles to be able to track their calories too. So what I've done is I've set up my own profile on the app. I'm using it to track my calories. I'm also using it to check in with my weight and do my weekly check-in. And it's a really good app. You can scan food, you know, and you can log all your nutrition on there as well. well. And it's just like a nice way to have everything in the one place. So like when I have my clients' profiles, they're able to track their nutrition on that app, they're able to track their workouts, they do their weekly check-in, and they do their daily habit form as well. So everything is within that app for my online coaching clients. And there's also a nice section, it's called Content Library. So each week on a Tuesday, I do a Q&A call for my clients based around certain topics or questions that come in through their weekly check-in forms. And I run through those in detail on a Zoom call recording on a Tuesday evening, and I pop it up then into the content library on the app where they can look back on it and pick up some tips and information from that there as well. So the Kahunas app is the one that I'm using. So the next question is, any tips for dealing with hunger in a calorie deficit? So before I touch on the tips, I just want to, I suppose, talk about some harsh, maybe home truths about this. So, you know, if you're someone going into a fat loss phase expecting not to be hungry, I'm sorry, but it's definitely not going to happen. For example, myself, I was feeling very hungry earlier on today before I went to the gym, but you know, it's about learning to push past that. When you think of it, when you're in a calorie deficit, you're fueling yourself with less food than you were before, and with less food than you were able to maintain your current body weight. So of course you're going to have bouts of hunger, you know, and that's where the real progress in fat loss is made, is when you're able to push through that hunger phase and allow your body to adapt to those new energy levels, which is called metabolic adaptation. So, you know, you have to allow that to happen. It's part of the process. And of course, it's going to be completely normal if you're someone that's looking to lose fat to feel hungry because you're in a calorie deficit. If you're not getting any bouts of hunger in a calorie deficit, you're probably not in a calorie deficit. So it's really important that, you know, you realize this from the get-go, and that's why it's so important to not go into an extreme calorie deficit from the get-go, because it will be very hard to stick to, and you know, you will probably give up on it because it is so hard to stick to. So that's why it's really important to be conscious of the amount of calories you take away from your overall maintenance calories that you're on at the minute, heading into a fat loss phase. So I suppose some of the tips with dealing with hunger would be to focus on 3 main meals. I know people are probably sick and tired of hearing me talk about 3 main meals, but it really is a really good way of being able to control your hunger. So if you can focus on trying to volumize those 3 main meals, decent protein source at each meal. Breakfast, lunch, dinner needs a decent protein source to keep you full and to keep you satisfied. Gone are the days where, you know, you're having maybe a slice of toast for breakfast, you're having a bowl of cereal for breakfast, because these are things that are easily digestible, high in carbohydrate, there's no balance of macronutrients there at all, and you're going to hit a slump, you're going to get hungry, and you're going to want more energy soon after. So it's really important that we have a balance of our macronutrients, our carbs, our proteins, our fats, and the important thing, which is fiber, in our 3 main meals. Focus on volumizing those meals with lower calorie and higher volume foods. So when we talk about high volume foods, we talk about things that are like our veggies, our fruit, things like that are going to fill you up, but they're low in calorie then as well. And again, fruits and veggies contain good amount of fiber, which is going to benefit your digestion. It's going to slow it down, you know, and those are the things you want to focus on in your 3 main meals. Other things will be then to keep track of, you know, your water intake. So sipping on water, especially between your meals, is going to help regulate your blood sugar levels, and it's going to help curb any cravings that you might have for a little bit longer. You know, and again, it's going to keep you fuller as well. So definitely trying to, you know, not go long periods without having any water at all or any fluids at all. It's really important that you try and keep a consistent flow of water intake throughout the day. So what I like to do with clients in terms of water intake is to get them to set targets for themselves throughout the day. So say, for example, before lunchtime or 1 o'clock, you know, and it will depend on how much water the person is drinking at the minute. But I would always say to them, try and have maybe 250 millilitres drank by 1 o'clock. Try and have another 250 millilitres drank by 3 o'clock, and then another by 6 o'clock. So then you're going through the day, you're more conscious because you have a target set for yourself. And again, another tip on that would be, if you're someone who has a massive water bottle and feel as though you never get to the end of it, buy a smaller one, and you know, you're going to be more likely to have to refill that then gives you a sense of achievement, and you're going to be more aware of the actual amount you're drinking then as well, because if you have a big 2 litre bottle, it's hard to tell how much you've drank throughout the day. So definitely having a smaller water bottle, and then give yourself the goal to have to refill it maybe 3 or 4 times in the day, and you could have maybe 1.5 litres drank without even realising. So that would be kind of the main tips around dealing with hunger. The next question is quite an interesting one. Does cardio or weight training burn more fat? So when it comes to the fuel that you burn in your exercise, it comes down to your heart rate, what levels of heart rate you're getting yourself up to. So say for example, if we go for a run, our primary fuel source is going to come from carbohydrates, or when we go for a walk, our primary fuel source is going to be from burning fats. However, burning fat doesn't mean losing fat. The only way that you lose fat is if you're in a consistent calorie deficit. So I wouldn't get too bogged down on thinking that I need to walk loads because I'm burning more fat, because if you're not in a calorie deficit, you will not lose the fat. It's important to kind of understand this from, I suppose, a training point of view as well, to realize that if you're someone doing high levels of intense exercise, it's important to have sufficient stores of glycogen there, aka carbohydrates in the body, so that you can use them up. And then, you know, when it comes to fat burning, lower intensity exercises is what we use, is what fat is used for then in that fuel source. So it doesn't really play a massive role in which exercise is going to be better to do, because if you're not in a calorie deficit, it's not really going to matter. The last question then is finding it hard to stick to a calorie deficit on days I train for sport. Any advice on this? So this is a really good question, and it can be quite a tricky one as well. So if you're someone who's looking to lose fat, but you also play a sport, maybe it's GAA football, maybe it's rugby, or maybe you're training for high rocks and stuff like that, it is going to be a lot harder for you to stay within a calorie deficit and still be able to perform to a high level in your sport, because you're going to require a lot more energy, aka you're normally going to require more food to perform at those high levels in your sport. So it's important to kind of play this safe. So for example, last year when I was training for the half marathon, I was in a calorie deficit. However, the week before the half marathon, I brought my calories back up just to below maintenance, and this was able to, I suppose, give me more energy. And 2 days before, I carb loaded for that half marathon as well, to kind of, I suppose, build up the glycogen stores in my body, because the glycogen stores previous to that had been a lot lower because I was in my calorie deficit. However, if you're someone who, I suppose, is training on a regular basis for a sport or whatever it is, it's important to kind of be smart with your calorie intake around those days that you train or you play competitively in a match or whatever it is. So, you know, you could split this up as well in terms of the day before you have training or the day of training or a match, to increase your calories slightly, and then for the rest of the days during the week, bring them back down to a calorie deficit level. You know, so one thing that I like to kind of talk about to my clients is look at your calorie intake as a weekly intake. So if your calorie allowance is, say for example, 1800 calories, you can kind of split that up any way you like during the week. It doesn't have to be 1800 calories from Monday to Sunday. You know, it could be 1640 for Monday to Friday, and then it could be higher for Saturday and Sunday. But you're still within your weekly calorie allowance, which is important. So you could do something similar with this for training around a sport, or for your nutrition around a sport. So where you kind of increase your calories the day before, especially if you have a match, increasing the calories the day before your match or a competitive, you know, part of your sport, whatever. You know, increasing your calories the day before is going to allow you to kind of carb load, and then, you know, important then to kind of be able to recover properly in the aftermath of that, and then you can bring your calories back down to a calorie deficit level. But again, it is a lot harder to stick to a calorie deficit when you have those performance goals as well. So it's just about kind of, you know, working closely with maybe a coach for that accountability, to see how your performance levels are, to see how your recovery is as well, to see how you're fueling yourself, if you're fueling yourself sufficiently for your sport. you know, and that's something I really worked hard on last year, because if I didn't fuel myself sufficiently and be in the process of losing fat, I would have really struggled through that half marathon. And you know, in the lead up to the half marathon, we'll say the couple of weeks beforehand, I was training within a calorie deficit. My runs, I was running long distances, and I did find it quite difficult. So it is important to just be able to monitor that. And again, if you have any more specific questions around that, just drop me a message. So that is the main questions that came in there, guys, from Instagram question boxes yesterday. So hopefully you found that interesting. Hopefully you can take something from that you might be able to implement into your own journey as well. And I will pop up another question box on Instagram where you can pop them in there, and I'll run through them on my next vlog video too. You know, and if you've any questions, please drop them in the comment below at the end of this vlog. So to finish off this vlog, I'm just going to show you a couple of clips of what I'm having for dinner. I think I have a low-fat beef burger on the menu tonight, and I have a rugby match tomorrow. So I'm just slightly increasing my calories today just to kind of build up the glycogen stores, because a rugby match is quite intense. So, you know, I need to have enough energy there again. And that's kind of similar to the last question there. So it's really important that you kind of play it, you know, you're under control of your calorie intake, and that kind of thing. So hopefully you found that interesting, guys. And I will pop up another question box on my Instagram stories soon.